So good morning, everybody. Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. President of the Republic, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of our audience, and fellow speakers. I am Elisa von Jordan-Forgy, co-president of the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention and chair of the Holocaust and Genocide Studies program at Keene State College in the United States. And it is my privilege and great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 4th Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank each of you for being here. That many of you have willingly traveled long distances to join this forum serves as a reminder to all of us just how important and pressing our work is. With your input, the next 2 days promise to be dynamic and productive, moving the work of genocide prevention forward in critical ways. This year's theme of the Global Forum, as many of you know, is prevention of genocide in the era of new technologies. This theme emerged from a March 2022 Human Rights Council resolution introduced by the state of Armenia, which was unanimously adopted. The resolution expressed concern at the use of disinformation and misinformation to spread racism, intolerance, xenophobia, negative stereotyping, and stigmatization, and to violate and abuse human rights. It is hard to imagine a more urgent topic at the present time when we have witnessed, for example, the use of social media technology to spread hate, recruit perpetrators, and even implement genocide in places like Myanmar, Iraq, Syria, Ethiopia, and Azerbaijan. Over the next 2 days, we will outline the challenges that new technology presses upon us as persons interested in genocide and its prevention. And we will also explore then the positive opportunities and possibilities offered by new technology, and particularly by digital technology, to promote lasting peace and lasting human security. The goal of these 2 intensive days of discussion is the adoption of a declaration of joint action related to new technologies that can guide and shape all of our work as we return to our respective countries and workplaces. Now, this 4th Global Forum is organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia with the support of the Special Advisor to the United Nations Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide, and in close cooperation with the International Association of Genocide and with Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, all of whom are represented here to support and participate in this forum. The timing of the Global Forum is chosen to coincide as closely as possible with the day of the adoption of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, as well as the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and the Prevention of this Crime, both of which are commemorated annually on December 9th. Armenia has a very special relationship with December 9th. We stand here today in the impressive Matanadaran, in the beautiful city of Yerevan, in the independent Republic of Armenia, a nation-state forged out of the collapse of the Russian and Ottoman empires in World War I. Were it not for the presence on clear days of Mount Ararat on the horizon, outsiders might forget that this republic was once the easternmost flank of an enormous cultural space of Armenians and Armenian history that reached all the way to Constantinople, today's Istanbul. The destruction of the majority of that civilization and its people in the early 20th century was the trigger, as we know, for Raphael Lemkin's lifelong quest for a convention against the crime that he named genocide, and for its universal ratification, which we still have yet to do. The Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1923 then formed one of the most important models, and perhaps even we can say the central model Raphael Lemkin used in his conceptualization of the crime of genocide. The universalist values of the Genocide Convention have been a strong current in Armenian genocide remembrance. I have frequently been deeply moved by the ecumenical commitments and of institutions devoted to Armenian matters, where comparative analysis is not only supported but actively encouraged. The Armenian Foreign Ministry has itself embraced this universal legacy. In 2015, it introduced the resolution that created the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and the Prevention of that Crime. Since then, it has held a global forum against the crime of genocide every 2 years, apart from 2020, when we were all forced to stay home due to the pandemic. This leadership sets it apart from most other nation states in today's international community, and offers threatened people the world over the bright light of solidarity in what can feel like a particularly dark time. The willingness of Armenians to share historical trauma with others and to mobilize that trauma to prevent other people from facing the same has been a source of inspiration and encouragement to me over the years. This global forum is a testament to Armenia's deep humanist tradition and its leadership in efforts to create a world without genocide. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome and thank our esteemed guests at this opening session, each one of whom has been a leader in global peace and human security and instrumental to the success of this global forum. It is an honor to have each of you here with us. I will introduce each of our guests in turn, after which they will come to the stage and give their remarks. At the end of this opening session, we will have a very, very short technical break to allow for the guests and our high-level segment to join us on the stage. We ask that you please stay seated during this short break so that we can seamlessly transition to our high-level segment without losing too much time. And no worries, there will be a break for coffee at 11:30, so you will have your coffee. Our first guest today needs no introduction. It is a great honor to be joined at this opening session by Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Phashinyan. Please come to the stage. Prime Minister, Minister Phashinyan is known the world over as a champion of human rights and a defender of liberty, in addition to the leader of Armenia's Velvet Revolution in 2018. His work on press freedom, anti-corruption, and social justice have earned the respect and admiration of world leaders, as well as of ordinary citizens, both inside and outside of Armenia. So it is with that great respect that we welcome you, Mr. Phashinyan.
Հայաստանի Հանրապետության մեծարգո նախագահ, ազգային ժողովի հարգելի նախագահ, հարգելի հյուրեր, կառավարության անդամներ, արդեն 4-րդ անգամն է, որ Հայաստանը հյուրընկալում է Ընդդեմ ցեղասպանության հանցագործության Գլոբալ ֆորումը։ Ես ուզում եմ նախ ողջունել բոլոր մասնակիցներին, Մարդու իրավունքների պաշտպանությունն ապահովող ցեղասպանություններն ու
for
զանգվածային
ensuring the human rights and preventing the crime of genocides, to ensure social justice, to restore social justice, and all those who take on the mandate of the above mentioned, our friends, our scientists, diplomats, political scientists, and media representatives, IT representatives. I'd like to greet you all here today. On the 9th of December 1948, the UN General Assembly adopted the Convention about the crime of genocide and its prevention. Many years after that, in 2015, Armenia initiated, with the broad support of the international community, it was possible to adopt the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the victims of the crime of genocide. In this context, I'd like to mention that during the previous global forums, unfortunately, we have started to consider genocide not only as a historical event, not only as a historical legacy, but also a threat that we face all around the world in various regions. And preventing genocide indeed becomes a pressing issue. In this context, representatives of the Republic of Armenia, we emphasize the first genocide of the 20th century, the Armenian genocide implemented by the Ottoman Empire. Nevertheless, I would like to mention that today we still face the threat and danger of genocide in this region. It is considered a pressing issue which requires prevention. And I do need to mention that during the previous times, more and more, especially the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, are raising their concerns, speaking about a potential genocide, a threat which they are facing on a daily basis. I believe all of us, each and every one of us, and the international community should take it seriously. We thought that the trilateral statement signed on November 9th created mechanisms to ensure, to prevent the potential genocide among the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Nevertheless, unfortunately, step by step, we noticed, and we are continuously envisaging the realities. The concerns that are being raised, they become more and more close to being materialized. And I must make a comment here regarding how we move forward when we have such concerns and issues. In 2021, we eyewitnessed situations, events, when in Nagorno-Karabakh, those citizens who were conducting their daily agricultural activities, a sniper killed just while in his own tractor. After that, we noticed other events where Azerbaijani armed forces entered Nagorno-Karabakh, the area which was under the protection of the Russian peacekeepers. And after this, step by step, a number of events took place which are worth mentioning, namely, when the Azerbaijani armed forces, during nighttime, they used strong light projectors. They were eliminating the houses after midnight. They were eliminating the Armenian villages. and inviting the Armenians to join in Islamic prayers with very, very loud speakers, thus making Armenians, commanding them to leave the villages. Of course, we respect the Islamic culture, Islamic religion, and a clear evidence of that is having in the center of Yerevan, having the Islamic mosque, the Blue Mosque, by the way, which has been restored during the years of independent Armenia. Nevertheless, but regional terrorism is what I see. I cannot give it any other definition than religious terrorism to what has occurred. I also need to mention here that unfortunately these activities have not occurred as single items. They are correlated. There is a plan. We see consistent planning, which are becoming more and more materialized. The concerns that we have that Azerbaijan is indeed planning a genocide in the Nagorno-Karabakh, is or planning for it. And from this perspective, I do need to mention the provocative speech that is taking place in the area of Lachin's corridor. I do need to mention that some try to draw parallels between Lachin corridor with the other communication channels in the regions, or the channels and infrastructure that might be used in the future, reconstructed. This is different. The Lachin corridor is for preventing genocide. Closing that corridor, stopping the activities on that corridor means, what does it mean? Condemning the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh to a genocide via three different scenarios. The first one can be emptying Armenians of the land, and the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh do not have the opportunity to live in their houses, on their lands. And this mini model is what we see in the Hadrut region of Nagorno-Karabakh, where not a single Armenian lives there after the 44-day war of 2020. I also need to emphasize here that the trilateral statement signed on November 9th ensures that the UN, the agency for refugees, they should ensure the return of refugees of Nagorno-Karabakh to these areas. But now, even the office, the agency for refugees of the UN, their heads, they themselves cannot enter these areas, not to mention that the refugees can return there in Hadrut region and the civilians of Hadrut. The next scenario which we envisage, which can be implemented, is the loss of identity, erasure of identity, which I believe is also one of the genocide models, potential genocide models. And today, the battle that Azerbaijani forces are against the names, geographical names, against the historical monuments in Nagorno-Karabakh comes to clearly prove what I mentioned above. So overall, in the security context, when we speak about security, sometimes we think only physical security. But what about identity security? The rights of human rights for identity and security, these are interrelated. This is interchangeably linked. It is ironical to speak about this, that the Armenian historical monuments, trying to present the Armenian historical monuments as having origins of another nation, another country, in this issue as well, maybe. For many, we are being quite flexible, and for we are very criticized because of being so flexible. However, there is an international specialized body called UNESCO, which has all the expertise, all the skills, in order to assess whether this or that historical monument is of what origin. However, I would like to mention that this This is not a battle against lifeless monuments. This is a battle against the identity of a nation. This battle does not have a historical context. This has a practical context. The purpose of this battle is to prove that the Armenians do not have the right to live in Nagorno-Karabakh, because we see that this is the battle against this historical monuments, the context when on the state level, when there's a task that the Armenian writings are replaced with other as if true writings on this or that monument. What is this if this is not preparation to genocide? There is no other way that I can define what is happening here as a preparation to genocide. And the third scenario is physical destruction, massacres, the signs of which we are already seeing, starting all the way from those villagers who were conducting their agricultural activities, who have been targeted by snipers and killed, all the way up to the 44-day war, the actions that took place during this war and killed the civilians not part of the war, but being shelled, being bombed, and being killed. I do not want us to consider genocide merely from one perspective, and it is not something that cannot be prevented. And I do need to mention that, regardless of how weird it may sound after this introduction, I am convinced that nevertheless, the prevention of genocide, the most important tool, is cooperation and dialogue. A dialogue with Baku and Stepanakert, between Baku and Stepanakert. In our foreign affairs domain, we believe this of crucial importance. Azerbaijan shows at every possible opportunity to say that they are willing to ensure the rights of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. However, in international platforms, all the statements, all the rhetorics that they use, it seems as if it is the international community. And now those people who are the beneficiaries of that statement. That statement has been addressed by the Azerbaijan to the international community, but it seems as if it is not being addressed to the people of the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. And we believe that that message would be true, would be honest, if it is heard in Stepanakert, in Nagorno-Karabakh, to the Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh. And I specifically wanted to mention here that security, indeed, is not only about physical security. It's about the security of your identity. That is an inextricably linked component. To know yourself is an inextricably linked component of human rights. On the other hand, to sum up my remark with a very practical or a few practical remarks which we need to do overall in order to prevent genocides, as well, including the ones occurring in our region. I believe that considering all the events, notorious events, current and historic, we need to change our regional relationships, the content embedded in our relationships, and the quality. We should start from the simplest steps. In my opinion, I believe hatred speech is unacceptable. Hate speech, prevention of it, managing it, excluding it is of utmost importance, and especially on an official level, but not merely on an official level. I do not want that the prevention and condemnation of genocides become an opportunity to condemn nations, to create hatred between nations, to make them deeper, to create a platform for making this divide even wider. I strongly believe that in this region, hostility should also be managed. And we should start from managing hate speech, which exists. At least Armenia, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, in these relations, we do have hate speech. But I do not want us to regularly be criticizing others. We should also have the opportunity to criticize ourselves, see ourselves from the very day-to-day level. The most important tools of prevention of genocide, I believe that we ourselves on an official level, we say that we do accept, we do emphasize that we ourselves should in Armenia stop, and as well as political competitors using hate speech, or calling them, giving them a national label as put them down using a national label. In Armenia, we have this. If you want to tell a person, like you want to hurt them to the deepest of their heart, you know what you do, right? We call them, you are a Turk. That's the worst abuse verbal abuse you can ever say in Armenia. A person that you know very well, a person who has been named that, and other people who have wanted to abuse me and have called me that I'm a Turk. They do not abuse me with that because I do not consider being a Turk as an abuse, verbal abuse. I believe that with these issues, we should face the reality and try to change them. In Armenia, in Azerbaijan, they have the same thing. If they want to hurt someone, they want to insult someone, even after the worst curse words in the Caucasus region, which have like a killing impact, they are not as effective as we use an insult as calling a person, you are an Armenian. In Azerbaijan, I believe that on an official level, on the level of the governments and the states, we should acknowledge and accept the reality and say that we do not agree with this reality. This is not what we want to see. We do not want the name of any nation be used as an insult. And I believe this is at the roots of a genocide, and it is at the roots of prevention of genocide. I believe that such realities do take place in Turkey as well. And my remarks today, I call upon the following, that let us start here. Because we cannot solve global issues. Why? Because we cannot first identify these issues on a genetic level. This podium here is of crucial importance because we're speaking about genocide. It's about our genes. And in order for us to understand this issue and the underlying causes, we should analyze the genetic levels and layers of the issue. I hope that among the most important discussions of this forum will be the above mentioned. There was an idea that, and I believe that we still have this concern in the Southern Caucasus, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, to have discussions via this or that format. This is not a new idea. This is quite an old idea. When I say old idea, I don't mean like ancient, but I mean time-wise. I have always been for this opinion. But I have proposed a very, very important, fundamental formula, resolution. That platform, first of all, should be used solely, to stop hate speech from this region, and on an official level. The heads of the countries should come up with these statements and say that we agree to cooperate with one another in order to eradicate hate speech. Especially on an official level. And it is from here that we should start preventing and condemning genocide. Because if any given person in Azerbaijan, Turkey, in Armenia, if anyone says Armenia or Turk, to one another on a political level, even if it's not on a political level, that person is doing that purposefully, to morally, politically, to destroy the person and to insult them to the deepest level. In essence, this is the genetic level of genetic genocidal mentality. On the other side, I would also like to mention the fact that now I am here speaking about these issues publicly. This comes to prove that we, nevertheless, are moving forward. There are steps forward. That means that we are facing the reality. We do acknowledge the reality. I would like to emphasize that Armenia, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and overall in our region, the relations in our region are of paramount importance. And by the way, management of hostility and enmity, there is one important formula. Sometimes there is such an approach that whatever Armenia says, then in Azerbaijan or in Turkey is saying exactly 100% the opposite in Azerbaijan or Turkey. Anything that is Azerbaijan said in Armenia, we should say the exact opposite, 180 degrees. And on the official level as well, of course not always, but very often we see that the safest opinion is saying exactly the opposite of what they said, because this is safe. This is safe both from a political perspective, this is safe from a moral perspective, and this is safe in the broader sense from a psychological perspective. And today, maybe it is the first time I will violate that reality. I will go against it. And today I want to share my agreement with a statement that was raised in Turkey. The idea was the following, that in all the countries in the region, including Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, they need one another for the security, historical security of these countries, for the sovereignty of the countries, for the independence of the countries. And this is a very important formula for us to understand, that once and for all, to change the regime of the relations that we have, we should acknowledge, why are we here? Why are we here? To live just to coexist? Or are we here just to save time? To destroy one another when the momentum comes. So this context, this subconsciousness, we do have in the region, especially more in one country, in the other country a bit less. In one country it's on an institutional level, in the other it's more on an embryotic level. But this reality does exist, and we do see time to time. It's like a cycle. And when we return to social modern technologies, I would like to mention that the reality that I was speaking about are clearly, vividly evident on social media platforms while monitoring and studying them. This is the problem of genocide. I do agree with the organizers. Is identified in new technologies from a new perspective. Now probably they're the most simple technologies, social networks. There was a time when I had an initiative, when I used to say that social networks can be a tool not for hate speech, but for opportunity to dialogue with one another. Of course, back then, that initiative failed, collapsed. You know why? Nevertheless, now, I do want to mention that new modern technologies which have joined countries so far from one another should be able to join countries who are literally neighbors. This might seem as if it's a very simplistic issue. However, it is a very complex issue. I wish success to all the participants of the forum trying to support the solution of this very complex concern. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for those very, very important comments. We will now hear a video message from UN Secretary, pardon me, not a video message. I will be reading a message from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, which was released on the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and the Prevention of that Crime. We are pleased to share these words from Mr. Guterres, since the office of the Secretary General has been the single most important, perhaps, world leader in promoting the institutionalization of genocide prevention tools within our instruments of global governance. UN Secretary General message on the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide, New York, 9th December 2022. Today is a day to remember and pay tribute to the victims and survivors of genocides across the world. It is a day to re-examine our collective failure to prevent this crime in the past and to redouble prevention efforts for the present and the future. More than 70 years after the adoption of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, the threat of genocide remains present in many places around the world. Discrimination and hate speech, the early warning signs of genocide, are on the rise everywhere. We must do more to promote strong political leadership and resolute action against these dangerous trends. We must do more to live up to our commitment to liberate humanity from the scourge of genocide. I recently visited Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, where I had the privilege of meeting survivors of atrocity crimes. Their moving testimony was a forceful reminder of the individual suffering, pain, and horror of genocide and atrocity crimes. I call on every member state to take concrete steps to protect communities at risk, including minorities, and address discrimination and persecution. States have the primary obligation for preventing genocide, but religious and community leaders, civil society, the private sector, and the media, including social media platforms, play an essential role. On this International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide, I urge all stakeholders to use all means at their disposal to prevent and end this crime. So let's take a moment to thank Mr. Guterres. Now we will hear from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia, Mr. Ararat Mirzoyan, whose ministry has incorporated the promotion of genocide prevention into Armenian diplomacy in multi-layered ways, including the periodic introduction of genocide prevention resolutions at the United Nations Human Rights Council, as one example. This strong support for genocide prevention from governments and especially from ministries of foreign affairs like this one is critical if we are ever to be successful in the work that we do. Thank you very much. Please come to the stage, Mr. Mirzoyan. Thank you for being with us today.
Honorable Mr. President, Honorable Mr. Prime Minister, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the 4th Global Forum against the crime of genocide in Yerevan, which this year is dedicated to the prevention of genocides in the era of new technologies. The regular global forum organized as Armenia was supposed to be held in December 2020. But unfortunately, it became impossible due to the war, not only because of the pandemic, but first of all, due to the war unleashed by Azerbaijan against the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. The consequences of that aggressive war have not been overcome to this day. Moreover, in May and November last year, and on September 14 this year, the sovereign territory of Armenia was attacked by Azerbaijan, resulting in gross violations of human rights and international humanitarian law, including the right to life, prohibition of torture, property, treatment of prisoners. The Armenian people faced new security threats, which have not yet been addressed. The situation is an outcome of a lengthy process when the spread of extreme hatred towards Armenians and the development of military led to the use of force. It should be noted that the approach to dealing with foreign policy issues through the use of force, which is manifested by the outbreak of new wars and conflicts in different parts of the world, indicates the crisis of a global security system. It is clear that power has always been an important factor in international relations, but no international system can be solely based on the might makes right principle. As for every strong one, there is even a stronger one. And even eternal war cannot reveal the accurate balance of power. Without universal norms of peaceful coexistence and international law, without red lines that are not amenable to double standards, the world cannot regain peace and development. It is also obvious that after the crisis of multilateralism, we need to reassess international relations and find a new consensus for the coexistence of peoples. Today, it might be difficult to predict all the elements of that international consensus, but it is obvious that the inadmissibility of genocides and ethnic cleansing, religious and national discrimination and hatred, as well as their prevention, the protection of human rights, including collective rights, should become one of the pillars of that consensus. Both an individual person and a nation have the right to life, security, in the truest sense of the word, to live safely and control their own destiny. And no one, no power, can deprive them of this collective and natural rights. From this point of view, today and here, the work of this forum, the presence of all of you, the generation of new ideas for the prevention of genocide are extremely important. Dear attendees, during the last 2 decades, the international community, represented by the United Nations, has done a great work to create new capacities and mechanisms for the prevention of genocide. One of the important steps to ensure the prevention of genocide has become the establishment of the position and the office of the Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on this matter in 2004, which has gained a great experience over the years, and many of the documents developed by the Special Advisor have become genocide prevention guidelines for the UN member states. We are grateful to Madame Alice Warimine-Derito for her participation in this conference and for her continued cooperation. Speaking about the structures involved in genocide prevention, I would like to emphasize that the UN Human Rights Council plays a major role in this matter. I am pleased to note that the President of the Council, Permanent Representative Argentina, to the United Nations Office at Geneva, Ambassador Federico Villegas is with us today. I would also like to highlight the work of other UN bodies, including special procedures, independent investigation mechanisms, and treaty bodies. In this context, I would like to emphasize the role of the resolution on the prevention of genocide initiated by Armenia and presented once every 2 years within the framework of the Human Rights Council. The resolution makes a significant contribution to ensuring the applicability of the provisions of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide and forming the relevant normative framework. It is a unique action plan that outlines next steps, further goals, and actions in this regard, while drawing attention to risks and challenges. Among such challenges, the resolution adopted in March 2022 included the use of new technologies and related risks. The UN Security Council has its unique place in the prevention agenda because the use of timely and effective measures by this body can create an efficient opportunity for the prevention of genocides. I should also mention that the Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, GAMAC Alliance, which Armenia has joined as a partner country, is a very effective format of cooperation. This alliance, represented by its chair, Madame Silva Fernandez de Gurmendi, is also with us today. A platform of states, civil society, and academic institutions with an aim to fight against mass crimes. I also express my special gratitude to our permanent partner, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, for their active participation in the work of the Global Forum, as well as their permanent support. Dear colleagues, the 21st century and the development of information technologies could not fail to affect the genocide prevention agenda. Today, we evidence the occurrence of both new challenges and new instruments for the advancement of genocide prevention agenda. Within the framework of this work of this forum, I invite all of you to discuss the effective mechanisms to fight against the abuse of current new instruments, as well as to harness their advantage. In conclusion, I would like to wish all of us an interesting and productive exchange of thoughts, and may there be no more peoples on our planet who will encourage the scourge of genocide. May it never, ever be so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mirzoyan, for those very, very important words. Finally, and last but certainly not least, it is my pleasure to introduce the Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide, Ms. Alice Wairimu Nderitu, the first woman to hold this position and a lifelong, unflagging supporter of community empowerment towards peace. Ms. Nderitu is one of the founders of the Uaino Platform for Peace, a conflict prevention agency that uses mobile technology to encourage citizens to report indicators of violence, linking early warning to early response. Her office continues that important work and a focus on the importance of the grassroots in our genocide prevention mechanisms. Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Nderitu. Thank you very much.
Excellency, Mr. Nikol Phashinyan, Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia, Excellency, Mr. Ararat Mirzoyan, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia, Excellency Ambassador Federico Villegas, President of the Human Rights Council, and representative of Argentina to the UN in Geneva, distinguished colleagues, I would like to begin by acknowledging how many of us are here from the field of the prevention of genocide, and know that obviously then with all these people here, all this convergence of thought here, that we'll definitely get somewhere in this very challenging field of the prevention of genocide. And so I would also like to recognize Sylvia Fernandez de Gourmedi, the chair of the Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, GAMAC. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are here for the 4th Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide, which was created in observance of the International Day of the Victims of the Crime. And we appreciate today the government of Armenia for the role that the government keeps playing in ensuring that this day remains, the day of December 9th remains so important. 2 days ago, on December 9th, 2022, we commemorated the 74th anniversary of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, an International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and of the prevention of this crime. December 9th also marks the day in 1948 when the UN General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. This convention became the first ever human rights treaty of the United Nations, In the year 2015, Armenia led the global effort to designate December 9th as the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and of the prevention of this crime. Armenia has been a very strong supporter of the Office of the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, and my predecessor was here in 2018 for another forum. And I would like to sincerely appreciate the permanent representative, Ambassador Muher Margarian, who is always a reliable partner and supporter of our office. My office also remains grateful to the Human Rights Council represented today by the President, who is here, for its consistency in support of the office, as most recently evidenced by the resolution that was adopted by the Human Rights Council on 31st March 2022, titled Prevention of Genocide. And once again, the government of Armenia was behind this. So the theme of the forum this year on genocide prevention, new threats and opportunities, focusing on the positive and negative impacts on new technologies on genocide prevention, is very timely. My mandate is to monitor and raise alarm to the United States. I keep saying United States, sorry, because we just had a very big event in the United States. It's still in my mind, December 9th. So my mandate is to monitor and raise alarm to the United Nations Secretary General, to the Security Council, to member states, and to other relevant actors on the risk factors of genocide and related atrocity crimes. I also raise awareness on the causes and dynamics of atrocity crimes and support member states and other relevant actors, including in capacity building, to promote prevention of these crimes. As the United Nations focal point on hate speech, my office also coordinates the implementation of the UN strategy and plan of action on hate speech, which was launched by the Secretary General in 2019. So many people in this room are aware that my office has set out the most common risk factors and their indicators in a framework of analysis, which we use as a basis for our monitoring work. And such risk factors include, amongst others, the presence of an armed conflict or other forms of tension and crisis, widespread human rights violations against groups based on identity, discrimination, dehumanization, hate speech, impunity, and states that have institutions that are not adequately prepared to respond to such trends. So when we speak about December 9th, which just happened 2 days ago, we are asked to remember what happened in the past, but also to think of what has happened after it came into force that could have been prevented. We do know that processes leading up to the commission of atrocity crimes feature many of these risk factors that I just mentioned. So we know that when we speak about the Holocaust, we speak about the 1994 genocides against the Tutsi in Rwanda, the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica, and also more recent situations where gross human rights violations that may constitute atrocity crimes have been committed in places such as Myanmar, Central African Republic, and Iraq, and others. And the failure to respond to these factors allows these crimes to still occur at the expense of its victims. So my office highlights these issues often. Often we put out press statements to highlight the risk factors that we see. And we do know that technology plays an important role in enhancing social engagement and connecting people worldwide. At the same time, it is easier to accelerate atrocity prevention and amplify impact. Technology has introduced benefits such as life-saving devices and made information more easily accessible to all of us. The UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech seeks to enhance UN efforts to address the root causes and drivers of hate speech, as well as its impact on victims and societies. So one of the commitments of the strategy is to use new technologies and engage with social media to address online hate speech. In this regard, my office engages with social media platforms to promote policies and practices on addressing online hate speech in line with the UN strategy. So my office, as the UN focal point, coordinates system-wide efforts to counter and address hate speech, including by supporting UN field presences, member states, and civil society to develop context-specific and national action plans on countering hate speech. We do know that we do not have a universal definition of what hate speech is or constitutes of, but we have a definition of hate speech in the UN strategy that reads that hate speech is any kind of communication in speech, writing, or behavior that attacks or uses pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of who they are, based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other forms of identity. This is often rooted in and generates intolerance and hatred, and in certain contexts can be demeaning and divisive. So now going back to the United States. 2 days ago in New York, on December 9th, Michelle Rosenthal told us of her experience when on October 27th in 2018, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, witnessed the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in United States history at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And she told us about how her brother Cecil and David Rosenthal were killed. We looked at the profile of the person who killed the people at the Tree of Life Synagogue, and the person who shot them had posted anti-immigrant and anti-Semitic messages on social media. We heard too from Raymond Whitfield from Buffalo in the US, where a gunman, again motivated by hate, killed 10 people and wounded 3 in a racist attack at a grocery store in a predominantly black neighborhood. This gunman, again, had also posted online quite a number of anti-hate, of anti-black sentiments. So since 2020, my office organizes Chatham House Rules roundtables with the leadership of tech and social media companies, where we raise challenges and good practices, where we agree on areas of cooperation and recommendations for action. So all of us are now communicating on tech and social media platforms, which really points to the need that I pointed out earlier for connection. However, global trends of hate speech and incitement fueling discrimination, much of it amplified on social media, violence and conflict as well. In the most serious cases, atrocity crimes continue to rise. So the response on who to moderate and why and how is with the tech and social media companies. This conversation on technology is essential to the mandate of prevention of genocide. based on the understanding that as regards dynamics that preceded the actual commission of genocide, hate speech was unquestionably a common denominator, and as I've pointed out in the two examples, that people continue to post on social media the kind of things that they are going to do, and then they do them anyway. We do know that this didn't just begin. Propaganda and disinformation were present in the Holocaust and preceding all genocides. People who fueled offline hate speech then were held accountable. Today, digital technology and social media is fueling hate speech everywhere. Hate speech offline is directly linked to hate speech online and to a global increase in violence towards other issues we and other UN colleagues are dealing with on a daily basis. For example, hate speech against immigrants and hate speech against minorities at risk. So we do need policies to curb hate speech, yet we know that these policies sometimes risk limiting free speech, and where they exist, they've been inconsistently enforced. There are different approaches. Some countries grant social media companies broad powers in managing their content and enforcing hate speech rules. Others can force companies to remove posts within certain time periods, like Germany, for example. So tech and social media companies are constrained by domestic laws. In liberal democracies, these laws can serve to diffuse discrimination and head off violence against minorities at risk, but such laws can also be used to suppress minorities. So technology has facilitated the targeting of vulnerable populations and human rights defenders. We see this in the extended use of online surveillance, as well as harassment and threats that many human rights activists and individuals belonging to minorities at risk face online. So the rapid expansion of social media platforms across the world without the corresponding content, moderation, resources, and capacities has resulted in the spread of online hate speech and incitement to discrimination, hostility, and violence at a rate never seen before, contributing to division, violence, and again, atrocity crimes. So we've seen social media used to disseminate hateful narratives against ethnic and religious minorities, refugees, women, and others. Often, such narratives are instrumentalized for political gain, making those targeted even more vulnerable. So in countries where there is conflict, as we've just heard, hate speech is often used to incite communities against each other and to exploit and address grievances, resulting in cycles of reprisals and revenge killings. And so for these reasons, action to combat hate speech needs to be integral to our effort to engage new technologies. And by addressing this divisive and harmful language online, targeting populations based on identity, we can avoid escalation of tensions that could spill over into violence. So ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, how can we best utilize technology in preventing atrocity crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity? We must address the negative consequences of new technologies and social media while utilizing the benefit of these tools. Access to information has allowed communities to mobilize and take action to prevent escalation of tension, as well as to raise alarm when risk factors of atrocity crimes are present, and we have many examples. New technologies have also been crucial in the documentation of atrocity crimes, from individuals using their mobile phones to satellite imagery. And this can contribute to holding perpetrators accountable and in mobilizing action to prevent atrocity crimes. We have vast amounts of gross human rights violations and abuses that have been perpetrated in conflicts through individuals that have reached the world through individuals documenting such violations that might otherwise be hidden or denied by the perpetrators at great risk to themselves. We must support them. In addition, new technologies, including artificial intelligence and virtual reality, are excellent tools for memorialization and education about past atrocities, as well as to promote prevention. We support and amplify the voices of victims. We promote human rights, in particular, non-discrimination, advancing digital literacy skills. So to conclude, I would like to reiterate that if not properly addressed, online hatred and hateful rhetoric will keep putting people's lives at risk and keep posing this significant threat to international peace and security. We must continue and intensify our efforts to challenge hate wherever it may occur and keep working with states to continue finding innovative ways to promote positive and alternative messages and policies and laws, including by giving a stronger voice and engaging with those most marginalized and affected by hate speech in society. I look forward to the discussion today and tomorrow on how we can use technologies to advance genocide prevention and uphold human dignity globally. As I thank you, I would like once again to appreciate the government of Armenia for the support, consistent support over the years to the Office of the Special Advisor for the Prevention of Genocide. Thank you.
So thank you so much to the Special Advisor, Ms. Indiritu. This brings to a close our opening session of this global forum, and I would like to thank again Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President, Mr. Foreign Minister, also the Speaker of the Armenian Parliament, and all of our esteemed guests for taking time to come, and especially to share your insights into genocide prevention with us and to offer us a framework for the work that we'll be doing over the next 2 days. Such high-level support for the cause of genocide prevention is priceless and is a gift to all humanity. So thank you all very much for being with us. Thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you. We are going to have a 1-minute technical break. Please do not leave the room. You can stand up and stretch your legs, but please do not leave the room. We will be having our high-level session in just a moment. Thank you so much. նրան։ Okay, now we're in business. Great. So thank you all who did stay in your seats. We are over time already, and so we are going to continue with our high-level session now and then take a short coffee break afterwards. So I appreciate everybody for staying with us. So I now have the privilege of moderating our high-level segment on the prevention of genocide in the era of new technologies. For this panel, we are joined by leaders in the field of genocide studies, mass atrocity prevention, human rights, and accountability. Our first speaker is Dr. Melanie O'Brien, the president of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, the third woman to hold that post. The IAGS, as many of you know, is the world's largest organization representing scholars and practitioners in genocide studies and has been an important, and as was noted earlier, permanent partner in organizing the global forums since their inception. Dr. O'Brien is additionally an associate professor of international law at the University of Western Australia and specializes in international criminal law related to genocide and its prevention, with a special focus on gender and international criminal law, especially forced marriages. So it is my honor to ask Dr. O'Brien to please come to the podium.
Thank you so much, and it is lovely to be back in Yerevan. I am delighted to be invited back here, and given that we are at a forum discussing genocide, I would also like to acknowledge that even though I am not on the land now, I normally do my work in Perth, Western Australia, which is built on the unceded lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. Humankind has always been creative and inventive, and these characteristics have led to a constant evolution of technology throughout history. While today we tend to think of technology as being digital, technology, of course, refers to knowledge related to the creation and use of technical means, including through industrial arts, engineering, and different fields of science. Essentially, scientific or industrial processes, inventions, or methods. This means that technology crosses a wide variety of processes and inventions, some of which have played a significant role in the commission of genocide. For example, the creation of trains and a railway network enabled the Nazis to transport Jews en masse to concentration and death camps. The Khmer Rouge used the building of technological infrastructure such as roads and dams as part of the slave labour that resulted in the deaths of so many Cambodians in the late 1970s. The invention of radio and television enabled a greater dissemination of propaganda against victim groups, and this has been followed by the internet and social media, the role of which will of course be discussed at this global forum. But I'm here representing the International Association of Genocide Scholars. So this morning I wanted to talk about what genocide scholars can do with regards to this question of prevention of genocide in the era of new technologies, and what are they already doing? Genocide scholars cross a wide range of disciplines, from history to law to political science to literature to museum studies, philosophy, sociology, anthropology. I could probably spend 10 minutes listing them all. This offers the perfect opportunity to really discover how technology contributes to the commission of genocide. After all, understanding how genocide is committed is essential knowledge to help prevent the crime. And also, more directly, how technology today can be used to prevent genocide. In 2017, Genocide Studies and Prevention, the open access journal of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, published a special issue titled Information and Communication Technologies in Mass Atrocities Research and Response. This issue looked at a variety of uses of technologies related to mass atrocities. For example, one article by Karen Namer, Whitney Brown, and Ranit Mashuri explored the design, development, and deployment of mobile technology by Physicians for Human Rights to document forensic evidence of sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Christophe Koetel from Amnesty International discussed using satellites and mobile phones to increase information certainty in human rights crisis situations, including addressing the challenging issue of assessment of the quality of information being collected. Stefan Schmidt and Dallas Mazzori considered the challenges of undertaking human identifications during or after armed conflict situations in the challenging context of mass fatalities and mass graves, focusing on the use of DNA-based identifications and the subsequent issues emerging from this, including privacy issues and processing delays of identification. Kristen Begtora and Sandvik and Nathaniel A. Raymond discussed the need for guides on ethical and responsible use of information communication technologies in mass atrocity response, evidence collection, and research. Last year in 2021, at our biannual conference, one of our keynote speakers was Alexa Koenig, Executive Director of the Human Rights Center at Berkeley Law, a co-founder of the Human Rights Center Investigations Lab at Berkeley, which trains students and professionals to use social media and other digital content to strengthen human rights advocacy and accountability. Alexa Koenig has most recently published on collaboration and the digital documentation of international crimes in Ukraine. A group of scholars at Leiden University have collaborated on a project funded by the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs focused on digitally derived evidence. The team drafted the Leiden Guidelines on digitally derived evidence in international criminal courts and tribunals, which guide these courts on how to use video, photography, satellite imagery, intercepts, call data, and audio recordings as evidence in international criminal cases. These are only some of the examples of the work that scholars are doing that directly deals with digital technology. These specific examples are clearly about technology, but of course other scholars explore technology and genocide in different ways. For example, the work of Vincent Sanchez Biosca on the photographs of Khmer Rouge atrocities, or that of Lior Zilberman on the use of cinema to tell the stories of genocide. We may not immediately think about this work as being about technology because we are so used to the media of photography and film, but yes, these are also forms of technology. Other scholars work on genocide education and memory, which is an area ripe for the use of new technologies today, in the teaching space and museums. For example, scholars Adam Muller and Andrew Wolford use technology such as virtual reality to memorialise Indigenous boarding schools in Canada. At this global forum, a number of scholars will be speaking about their areas of research that help us understand this connection, and their research can be used in practice to assist with prevention, punishment, and education. For example, Dr. Ronan Lee has analysed in depth how the Myanmar military used social media to disseminate hate speech, demonstrating the important connection between this conduct and the concept of identity, which of course forms a key component of genocide. Dr. Rhiannon Nielsen is working on a project looking at the viability and ethics of cyber humanitarian interventions to prevent and mitigate atrocity crimes, asking how we can use algorithms for atrocity prevention. Thus, we can see that genocide scholars can undertake research across all manner of topics relating to genocide and technology, and this research has extraordinarily practical application in mass atrocity prevention at all stages of prevention, punishment, and education of genocide. I cannot stress enough to policymakers, UN representatives, and government representatives what a crucial expert resource scholars are. Scholars have the expert knowledge, and they have done the research or can do the research that has or will find the answers, the solutions that you can apply in practice to improve genocide prevention, punishment, and education. I encourage such representatives here today to use scholars as consultants to fund research projects, to read our scholarly research and to implement the recommendations and conclusions that scholars make to strengthen the response to mass atrocities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Brien. Our next speaker, Silvia Fernandez de Gomendi, is the chair of the Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, a state-led network of states, civil society, and academic institutions committed to preventing atrocities worldwide. She is also an Argentine lawyer, diplomat, and judge who has been a judge at the International Criminal Court since 2010 and served as the president of the ICC from 2015 to 2018. In 2020, she was elected to serve as the president of the Assembly of States Parties to the Rome Statute, and she, perhaps more than anybody else, understands the importance of accountability to genocide prevention. Please, Ms. Fernandez de Gomendi, please come up. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I'm very pleased to be in beautiful Yerevan for the first time and extremely honored to be part of this 4th Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide in my capacity of chair of the Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crimes, GAMAC. As it has been said, GAMAC is a global network of states, civil society, and academic institutions that aim to support states in establishing national architectures and policies for the prevention of genocide and other mass atrocities. GAMAC has 12 steering group members, 23 partners, and 3 informal alliances with intergovernmental organizations, including UNESCO, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IRA, and the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. GAMAC is also proud of working together with the Office of the UN Special Advisor for the Prevention of Genocide, Ms. Alice Neteritu, who is among us today. GAMAC is also very pleased to count Armenia, our host, amongst the state partners. I praise the organizers for focusing this forum on prevention of genocide in the era of new technologies. Genocide is certainly not born out of new technologies. It suffices to look back into history to recognize that evil does not depend on sophisticated means to materialize. However, it is obvious that technology can contribute to disseminate prejudice, facilitate links amongst its promoters, and amplify man's capability for destruction. New technologies are no doubt part of the problem. However, as reflected in the excellent program of this forum, new technologies can also be part of the solution by providing formidable tools to prevent genocide, protect societies, and advance accountability efforts, including through the production of new forms of evidence to document crimes and bring perpetrators before justice. As it is now well known, genocide does not happen overnight. It is the culmination of a long process, which often begins with words, hateful messages, as has already been noted by Ms. Neteritu. As learned from tragic recent experiences, such messages may be effectively transmitted through conventional and even rudimentary means of communication. However, it is clear that new technologies which have radically changed the way we work and communicate enhance the ability to transmit, amplify, and generate prejudice and intolerance, which can potentially escalate into violence and mass crimes. GAMAC recognizes in hate speech a very serious precursor of violence and has sought to actively contribute to current debates on this matter. Last year, it dedicated its entire 4th Global Conference to discussions on strengthening national efforts to address hate speech, discrimination, and prevent incitement. In the work leading to the conference and as part of its aftermath, GAMAC mobilized its community around this topic throughout 2020 and 2021. Among other initiatives, it organized a series of online discussions specifically on decoding hate speech, together with its partner, the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies, MIX, which is also present here today. As this topic will also occupy one of the panels of this forum, I would like to share 4 main recommendations that emanated from this online series that could be helpful for further discussions. First, technology can be weaponized. The main difference between online and offline hate speech is the reach and scale that social media platforms offer. An individual can not only be a consumer, but also become an anonymous producer of dangerous content with a greater and potentially transnational reach. Secondly, technology can be a helpful amplifier of counter-narratives, that is, be part of the solution. Online tools can indeed be used for fact-checking to counter hate speech and the harmful effects of misinformation. Technology can also be used for monitoring hate speech as an early warning indicator of discrimination and potential violence. Third, self-regulation by big technology companies is not enough. They are not properly equipped to detect context-specific hate speech. Therefore, social media platforms need to adapt and enforce policies according to international standards. Finally, a piece of good news, monitoring social media for hate speech and incitement has helped reduce violence in some countries during elections, for instance. However, the right to freedom of expression should always be respected in combating hate speech. Indeed, in some cases, the shutdown of media and social media has raised concerns over the risk of limiting freedom of speech and the media. I look forward to our further discussions on these and other important topics covered by this forum. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I now introduce Federico Villegas, President of the United Nations Human Rights Council and permanent representative of Argentina to the United Nations office in Geneva. Mr. Villegas has spent his career building the programs and institutions in human rights that have been a strong and proud feature of Argentina's international diplomacy and its contribution to our current international human rights and accountability protocols. He headed the Argentine Foreign Ministry's project to establish the first national program against discrimination in cooperation with the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and was involved in the establishment of the Mercosur Center of Human Rights Public Policy and the UNESCO International Center for Human Rights, both of which are headquartered in Argentina. Please, Mr. Villegas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be also for the first time here in Yerevan. And I want to take the opportunity also to thank the Armenian government, because the Vice President of the United Nations Human Rights Council is a distinguished friend and fine diplomat, the permanent representative of Armenia in Geneva. He has been my Vice President this very difficult year of the Human Rights Council. So let me share some thoughts. First of all, the Human Rights Council have three roles that are very linked to the theme of this forum. On one side, we analyze the human rights situation of every single country in the world. 193 member states of the UN have to put their human rights situation on the table and receive recommendations, suggestions, criticism. And that is also an important tool. We are starting the fourth cycle of this universal periodic review. And in those four reviews, the average number of recommendations that each country receives are 200. And regardless of the level of development, region, culture. And that means that in those recommendations that are given by other states, many things are related to precisely genocide prevention. The second role is we address serious human rights situations. We cannot look at human rights country situation only every 4 years. We need to address serious cases, and that is the case. We have over 13 mechanisms for the investigation of serious violations of human rights in different countries. This year, of course, a very challenging year, one of the most challenging in the history of the Council, with world-shaping events like climate change and the effects of the pandemic and a war in the heart of Europe with global impacts. We had an urgent debate, of course, on Ukraine. We approved a commission of inquiry to investigate violations, alleged violations stemming from the Russian aggression to Ukraine. We established a mechanism on Nicaragua, and most recently we just established a mechanism on Iran. And I'm about to appoint the experts for that mechanism. So that too, and we have here a distinguished member of one of the mechanisms of the UN Human Rights Council on Myanmar. The third is the progressive development of human rights norms and standards. The Human Rights Council is the place where future generations, where we develop the norms and standards for present and future generations to have their rights better protected. And what we are doing is just the tip of the iceberg. We have to think always in historical perspective what we do. The revolutionary idea of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that each person has rights beyond being a national, of a state or religion, and that the international community collectively has to protect that, is a revolutionary idea, but it's only 74 years old. That means that this is the tip of the iceberg of what we are going to do. And if you look at the agenda of the Human Rights Council, only in the last session in September, we approved a resolution on cyberbullying. We approved a resolution on disinformation. We approved a resolution for the first time on the impact on human rights of new military technologies, like legal autonomous weapons. Because following our distinguished first speaker on scholars, you know, when you compare about the train and other technologies that came and unfortunately were used also to take people to Birkenau, is technology and human rights is like nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is an absolutely amazing development of technology for the peaceful use of medicine or energy, but also you can build a nuclear weapon. And that is what is happening with technology and human rights. The problem is who is going to navigate the gray line between technology and human rights. Are we going to leave a private millionaire businessman to decide what is wrong and what is not wrong on social media? Let's just look in historical perspective. You know, there was a famous journalist that has been sentenced by the International Tribunal in Rwanda in the radio of Thousand Hills in Kigali, a Belgian journalist, that called on the radio to kill Tutsis because they were cockroaches, and he was sentenced for inciting genocide. But what if that person today had a Twitter account? That not only the people in Kigali by the radio listen to him, but millions of people listen to him. Are we going to leave the owner of a private business to decide to cancel his account or not? So my message is we need to strengthen what we do in the Human Rights Council. The good thing is that we don't always have easy discussions. This year has been the most challenging. I don't need to tell you, we had many, many difficult situations. But you know what? The good message is that 70% of our resolutions have been approved by consensus. 30% went to a vote, like Ukraine, or the adoption of a special rapporteur on the Russian Federation, or Nicaragua, on addressing or not the report of the High Commissioner on Xinjiang. All those complicated issues went to a vote. And that is fine. It's part of multilateral diplomacy. But you know what? The resolution presented by Armenia, so important, on the prevention of genocide, was by consensus. The resolution on disinformation was by consensus. The one on cyberbullying presented by Argentina and Germany was by consensus. And the one on the impact of new military technology also was by consensus. That what gives us is the hope that that progressive development of new human rights standards is still saved, and my time is over, it still is safe to continue progressing the development, and I hope that we can manage to strengthen the Council in these discussions to find the gray line between technology and genocide prevention. Genocide doesn't happen overnight, like others said. If you follow 8 or 10 stages, according to Stanton or whoever you follow of the scholars, in any of those stages, you can have the good use of technology or the bad use of technology. And last, we are very happy that the Council was able to learn from the pandemic, and we introduced remote participation of victims directly before the Council. That was a tool that we had to develop during the pandemic. There was no other way to, because we didn't have in-person meetings. But now we realize how important it is to continue with that practice, because we are able to get direct testimonies from victims all over the world addressing before the Council. And that is an amazing tool for prevention of genocide also, because it's not an NGO based in Geneva or the one that can pay the flight from London to go to Geneva. Now we have NGOs from all over the world and direct victims. We had women from Afghanistan, and we have women from Iran in the last session, directly from Tehran or Kabul. So that's another good use of technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing that really good news as well. Thank you very much. Next, we are joined by Dr. Fabian Salvioli, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice, and guarantees of non-recurrence. He is also a professor of international law and human rights at the School of the University of La Plata in Argentina, where he directs the Human Rights Master's Program and the Institute of Human Rights. His mandate as a special rapporteur includes ensuring accountability, promoting truth, and providing remedies to victims, the hard, practical work of addressing past wrongs in order to prevent future ones. Please, Mr. Salvioli, please join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this high-level panel with distinguished colleagues around the world. 3 Argentinian people in the same panel is perhaps too much. But anyway, it is a great honor for me to participate in this global forum against the crime of genocide. And my first words here are to express my deepest solidarity with individuals, families, collectives, peoples and nations that have been victims of these heinous crimes throughout history. Genocide constitutes one of the most heinous crimes against humanity. Its consequences are devastating, victimizing entire generations. There is also long-standing evidence of the intergenerational effects of trauma of families and communities, as evidenced by the tremendous Holocaust during World War II. The Commission of Genocide warrants the implementation of a transitional justice process comprising the 5 pillars: truth, justice, reparations, guarantees of non-recurrence, and memory. Genocides must be duly investigated and documented, their perpetrators brought to justice, tried and punished with penalties that reflect the gravity of the crime. Victims and their families deserve full reparation, including public apologies, other measures of satisfaction, rehabilitation, and compensation. As mandate holder of transitional justice, I focus my job on the measures adopted by governments to guarantee truth, justice, reparations, memory, and guarantees of non-recurrence in situations of transition from conflict or authoritarian rule where there have been gross violations of human rights and serious violations of international humanitarian law. A transitional justice process is defined as the full range of processes and associated mechanisms established for dealing with the large-scale past abuses in order to ensure accountability, serve justice, and achieve reconciliation. For the transitional justice process to be successful, all 5 pillars must be fully complied with, all. States cannot choose just one and discard the others. They are all intimately related, and they all aim to prevent the recurrence of crimes and future human rights violations. Without truth, society is deprived of general knowledge of what happened. An adequate process of memory cannot be carried out. Without judging and condemning the perpetrators, a message is given to society that the most atrocious crimes are tolerable. Without comprehensive reparations to the victims and their families, they are re-victimized and deprived of justice. The 2 pillars that relate directly and most profoundly to prevention are institutional measures for non-repetition and memory process. Memory is the 5th pillar of transitional justice processes. Memory processes should especially pay tribute to the victims and bring the voice of the victims to society as a whole and to future generations. The use of new technologies to advance public policies of memory can play a key role in the prevention of genocide. Within the guarantees of non-repetition, I believe that 2 general actions can be highlighted to focus the new public policy on human rights. To reform the national institutional and legal framework, to promote the rule of law in accordance with international human rights law, and restore confidence in the institution of the states. In this framework, we must look both to the past and to the future, to develop appropriate vetting processes, to reform the laws and provisions of which gross human rights violations have been based, and to bring all domestic law into conformity with international human rights obligations. The current dynamics of societies present complex challenges, including taking into account the inappropriate use of new technologies as a tool to promote hate speech and the risk this poses to human rights. History, unfortunately, shows us that crimes against humanity have never been committed without a social atmosphere of discrimination and violence to fuel them. The fundamental right to freedom of expression cannot and should not cover discriminatory speech and hate speech. A fundamental tool is human rights education at all formal levels. Incorporation of human rights in education curricula as a subject and as a transversal axis of all contents. In this way, a culture of human rights is created. Citizens incorporate human rights into their daily lives, and nations acquire greater democratic quality. Raphael Lemkin, in his autobiography, describes how, as a young man, he was shocked by the suffering of the Armenian people, and even more, he was outraged to find that the 150 Turkish war criminals arrested and interned in Malta by the British government had been released. Lemkin wondered, a people had been murdered and the guilty persons were released. Why is one person punished when he kills another person, and yet the murder of 1 million is a lesser crime than the murder of a single individual? From then on, he would dedicate his life to the fight against genocide, and later to the adoption of an international convention to prevent and punish the crime. 74 years ago, the UN General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. During the debates, the delegate from Pakistan, Begum Ikramullah, pointed out that not only was the convention written on the blood and tears of more than 1 million Muslims who died in the genocide perpetrated during the partition of India in 1947, but that genocide was often committed throughout the ages against various peoples and nations, and the convention was necessary to prevent other people from suffering similar acts in the future. It is that the same spirit, that of Lemkin and Begum Ikramullah, that must dominate our discussions these days. Now, to state in high voice that the use of new technologies cannot be allowed to be the platform for social division, discrimination, and hatred. I would like to end as I began, by expressing solidarity. Solidarity with the victims and their families, the victims of the past, and those who now, at this very moment, suffer practices of genocide, other crimes against humanity, or similar atrocities. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those moving words and that expression of solidarity. We will now hear from Cecilia Barbieri, Chief of Section on Global Citizenship and Peace Education at UNESCO. She will be delivering a message on behalf of UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay, who is the second woman to act as Director General and also was a trailblazer as French Minister of Culture, where she supported women's contemporary art and initiated international programs to safeguard cultural heritage in conflict zones. Her 2017 draft resolution number 2347 to the UN Security Council on the protection of cultural heritage was adopted unanimously. The work that she and Ms. Barbieri do on the protection of cultural heritage and the promotion of cultures of peace are essential elements in the prevention of genocide. Please, Ms. Barbieri.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, Excellencies and distinguished participants. So I'm also very pleased to be here today. It's also my first time in this beautiful country and in Yerevan. And I'm very pleased to convey this message on behalf of our Director General. Genocide never comes out of the blue. Every atrocity crime throughout history has started with words. Words that dehumanize, words that convey hatred, words that attack vulnerable groups. These words gain traction when they are spread, notably through the media. In recent years, the media has undergone major upheavals as a result of new technologies. We heard a lot this morning. The explosion of social media platforms has accelerated communication between individuals, governments, and groups within and across borders, which also means that hate can spread, and is spreading faster than ever before. More than ever, we must try to fight all kinds of racism and discrimination, to combat destructive and regressive ideologies, as well as hate speech. This is a commitment that lies at the heart of UNESCO's mandate to build peace in the minds of men and women, and which we reaffirmed last month in Mexico as the international community gathered for our second Global Forum against racism and discrimination. This starts with education, an education that promotes peace, mutual understanding, respect, and global citizenship. An education that learns from the past too, to fully understand where violence and discrimination can lead to, and to prevent history from repeating itself. This is why UNESCO is committed to educating about genocide and the long-lasting scars it leaves by working with educators, developing new teaching methods, and creating new materials to tackle genocidal and hateful ideologies. Learning about the past is also essential to navigate the ocean of information available online, to detect conspiracy theories and denial of established historical facts, and respond responsibly to hateful narratives. And UNESCO works with platforms such as Facebook and TikTok to prevent Holocaust denial and distortion online by redirecting users towards verified information. More broadly, UNESCO also works to equip young people with media and information literacy, with the capacity to recognize and resist messages of hate and engage positively online as global citizens. These skills are vital if the digital sphere is to foster understanding, tolerance, and cooperation between people and communities, rather than sowing division and violence. In 2021, UNESCO published a new edition of its Media and Information Literacy curriculum to address the new challenges of the digital era, from digital citizenship to hate speech. And UNESCO, in collaboration with the Office of the Special Advisor on Genocide, will shortly be publishing a policy guide to better equip education systems to foster understanding of hate speech and help develop educational programs that address its root causes and counter its manifestations. But for the digital sphere to truly become an asset for communication and peace, we must combat the spread of hate speech and disinformation itself. And this requires a joint effort with media platforms, whose algorithms all too often push people toward extreme content. And this is why UNESCO is gathering media platforms, governments, and regulators in February to discuss a modern regulatory framework to help build an internet of trust and fight online hatred while protecting freedom of speech. Ladies and gentlemen, prevention of genocide, notably by addressing emerging challenges in the digital sphere, is at the heart of UNESCO's mandate through the promotion of education for global citizenship, the fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and all other forms of intolerance and discrimination. Therefore, we should educate, research, and remain alert about the violent ideologies that fester online if left unchecked. And in this way, we can tirelessly strive to strengthen the bonds of our common humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that important message. Thank you. Our next guest is Dr. Angelos Syrigos, Deputy Minister of Education and Religious Affairs of the Hellenic Republic, and also Associate Professor of International Law and Foreign Policy at the Department of International and European Studies of the Pantheon University of Social and Political Sciences in Athens, Greece. He has written books on Greek-Turkish relations and the Cyprus issue, among other topics, and his public and intellectual work are a testament to the importance of education, diplomacy, scholarship, and cultural heritage in domestic and regional peace-building efforts. Thank you very much. Please come. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. First of all, I would like to thank the people who organized the 4th Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide for inviting me. Both Greeks and Armenians lived together side by side for more than 2,400 years in the same lands in Asia Minor. The tragic events described by Greeks as minor catastrophe or by the Armenians as catastrophe divided us, but we still remember the days that we lived in the same cities, in the same villages. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to say that we have to be extremely careful with the use of the word genocide. I'm saying this because almost all the suffering of the people of the world is named today as genocide. Genocide cannot be understood simply in terms of killing people. The 1948 Genocide Convention clearly limited genocide to the deliberate destruction of ethnic, racial, and religious groups as such. It implicitly drew a particular sharp line between genocide and other forms of mass killings. Most important, the Genocide Convention said that genocide involved the destruction of groups in whole or in part through a variety of means, not only mass killings. As Paul Lemkin wrote in a letter to New York Times in November 1947, the case of the Armenians, the case of the Christians under Turkish rule in the Balkans, pogroms of Jews under Tsarist Russia, these were not isolated cases or acts of violence multiplied by hundreds or thousands of victims, but collective crimes based upon a specific criminal intent to wipe out entirely or partially a human group. Second observation. Groups identified as enemies in the minds of perpetrators are often comprised of people whose imputed power bears little relationship to reality. Let me take two examples. The Young Turks claimed that the Ottoman citizens, who were ethnic Armenians, Assyrians, or Greeks, were able to fight the powerful and fully equipped Ottoman army. That's why they had to kill them. The Nazis defined the Jews as a powerful enemy, although they included among them people who had only part Jewish ancestry or were totally assimilated in German society and whose wealth and power, such as it was hardly connected to their ethnic descent. Third observation. Yes, but many of them have survived. The destruction of a group identity is genocidal even when its individual members manage to survive physically. Let me take the example of the Jews during the Second World War. Not even Hitler managed to succeed in killing all the Jews, even within occupied Europe. What matters is that there was a manifest continuity between early phases of Nazi violence against Jews and the final stage of mass extermination. The intention to destroy the Jews as an economic, political, and cultural force in German and European society was manifested much earlier, and there was a sense that systematic killings completed as final solution. A process began much earlier in many other measures, less final and comprehensive in their violence. Fourth, which is an excuse we often hear in relation with the tragic events that took place in the Ottoman Empire between 1914 up to 1923. The incidents, meaning genocide and ethnic cleansing that took place at that time, were due to the war. If this was the case, the Allied powers had the right to exterminate all the German population following the end of the Second World War. 6, which is connected with the problems we are facing with technology. We must have a very good knowledge of the events. Let me take the example of the Armenian genocide, the genocide of the Greeks, and the genocide of the Assyrians. How many genocides we had? 1, 2, 3, 4? No. In reality, we had only one genocide. The genocide of all the Christian populations in Minor Asia. This started in early 1914, before the First World War. When we speak about the genocide of the Armenians, of the Greeks, or the Assyrians, we speak about different phases of the same genocide. When we divide these different phases in different genocides, we offer to the perpetrators the ability to find the excuses why they murdered the Armenians, the Greek, or the Assyrians. Education is the most important thing. We do not want recognition of previous genocides as a revenge or a way just to memorize the victims. We do not want these events being repeated. Let me take an example. During the last 2.5 years, there is a TV series in Turkey TV called Teşkilat. It is the Turkish equivalent of Mission Impossible, the American series. They speak about a group of people who work for the Turkish secret forces, and they work all over the world. It is okay until now. The only problem is the use of the word teşkilat. Teşkilat does not mean anything in modern Turkish. Nevertheless, teşkilat means the secret organization, Teşkilat-i Mahsusa, which organized the mass killings and the genocide of the Armenians and the Greeks and the Assyrians between 1914 up to 1918. It is equivalent to see in the German TV a TV series called Gestapo. It is unthinkable. Nevertheless, in Turkey, the use of the word teşkilat and the meaning that they are the people who continue Teşkilat-i Mahsusa, it is considered as something logical without problems. That is the reason that we have seen, it is unthinkable today that Germany supports a nation against Israel. It is unthinkable for Germany to sell weapons to Syria or to Iran. Nevertheless, what is unthinkable for Germany, it is what happened 2 years ago between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Turkey offered weapons to Azerbaijan to fight the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. I find what happened in Germany as the best example. In Germany, you know, it is very difficult to face your history, to accept that your father or your grandfather was a person who participated in a genocide of another nation, of a racial or ethnic group. The Germans learned to do it because they were educated after the end of the Second World War. They had to face their history because the Allied powers obliged them to face their history. And this took place only through education. So I strongly believe that education is the most important thing. Finally, we have to admit that the Greeks call the events that took place between 1914 up to 1922 as minor Asia catastrophe. The Armenians use the word Metz Yegem Yegern or Aget, which means the great crime or catastrophe. The Jews use the word Holocaust. This does not mean that all these events do not constitute a genocide. Genocide comprises mass murders, ethnic cleansing, destruction of cultural monuments, the violent uprooting of a population from its ancestral homes. Genocide is the dissolution of an entire world. It is the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very important talk. Thank you. So finally, again, last but certainly not least, we will hear from Dr. Verena Alberta Shepherd, chairperson of the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Dr. Shepherd is also professor of social history at the University of the West Indies and director of the university's Institute for Gender Development Studies. She has a long career in the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, where she also served as a member of the Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent and lobbied for the creation of the International Decade for People of African Descent, which we are currently in and which will end in 2024. Dr. Shepherd will join us online. She is not here with us today, and so we will hear her message online. Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. Dr. Shepherd, can you hear us? We're having a hard time hearing you. Can you wait 1 second? What does one do? I don't know. Dr. Shepherd, you're not muted, are you? Is the audio on our end? No, she's okay. No, not yet. Not yet. Thank you for checking, but no, we can't hear you yet. Okay, Dr. Shepard, we are working hard on this. Can you say something again to see if we can hear you?
I can hear you very well.
Oh, good. We can hear you, actually. It's a little low. Can we raise it up?
I am at my maximum volume.
Wonderful. I think we can hear you. So,
Okay.
one moment.
So I will start again.
It's okay? Okay. So, Dr. Shepard, thank you very much for joining us once again. We're very honored that you're here with us. Thank you.
Okay, so let me start again. I started by saying greetings to the Honorable Prime Minister, other excellencies, fellow speakers, and I express thanks to the organizers for inviting me to make a statement on behalf of CERD at this 4th Global Forum against the crime of genocide. And I express kudos to the government and people of Armenia for hosting this forum. I regret that I cannot be with you there in Yerevan, but I send warm greetings from Kingston, Jamaica. The topic chosen for the 4th Global Forum is important because any crime without a remedy is abhorrent to the spirit of justice. And we have seen the ways in which unremedied crimes like genocide against certain populations, historically and in the more recent times, have disfigured our world and affected the maintenance of peace among nations. As a reminder, genocide is defined as any act conducted or committed
there's nothing. Thank you. Dr. Shepherd? Dr. Shepherd, I'm interrupting you. I'm so sorry. The sound just went out. Again, we're having terrible technical problems. So the organizers are working on that, and they're asking, and we hope you might have time, if we could take a small break while they work on the technology, and they will get back to you. They will email you in a few moments when it's ready to go. Is that okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much, because we really want to hear your thoughts and your words. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so everyone here, we're going to take a coffee break while the organizers are working on technology. So thank you all.